But first I'm going to go through really fast about where we fit in this bike sharing world. Donkey Republic, it's an app to rent a bike in many locations in many cities around the world. I think people kind of know what bike sharing is, more or less. In the bike sharing world, there's Docked. These are these big, old, heavy, expensive systems like our friends at Boozhooklyn. Yeah, so basically they're usually public-funded systems, not very scalable, not very global thinking, whereas dockless systems have come out and they're more like normal bikes. Ours just have a Bluetooth lock on them. They're much more scalable, much more flexible, more convenient for users. So like Boozhooklyn, one of these bikes costs about $20,000 paid by taxpayers. Ours is less. And yeah, so one of the differences between docked and dockless systems is, yeah, you can be much more flexible and have a much more coverage. We actually have less bikes than Boozhooklyn, but a lot better coverage of Copenhagen, for example. And then you have free-floating bike shares, which is a type of dockless system where people can pick up the bike wherever they find it, they unlock it, they take it for a ride, and then they dump it wherever they feel like, which is, yeah, it's another type of dockless system. It's not what Donkey Republic does, and so that's important to kind of understand where our product has come from and where it's gone to. Donkey Republic has a hub-centric system. We've kind of carved out this niche where it's a lot more controlled, better maintained, higher quality. Basically, it means you take a bike from a geolocation which is defined in the app. You get to keep the bike, take it wherever you want, so you have flexibility, lock and unlock. And then when you're finished, then you have to return it back to one of these locations defined in the app. So yeah, the difference is that it is much more controlled system, much more neat, tidy, and with a higher reliability for users. So this is an image from China with, yeah, where there's these free-floating systems that create total chaos. Yeah, there's some donkeys. Yeah, but I'm not going to shit on free-floating systems too much because it really is the model that's like grown a lot all over the world and really expanded bike sharing. It's just not what we do. We kind of have a little niche for ourselves. And also our bikes end up in funny places sometimes as well. So when Donkey Republic started, there was a lot of different testing of different models. And then where they, including a free-floating model, but yeah, where they really kind of got initial traction was in this visitor segment. So people visiting cities, it could be tourists or it could be like business visitors or exchange students or whatever it is. And then, you know, renting a bike. So the product and the whole company really was built around scaling this for this segment, which meant like, you know, reserving a bike in advance and then you're picking your time of pickup and your duration, and you can do like multiple bikes on a booking. And then it also meant that it's a, you know, very profitable segment because, you know, you have a high booking value per rental. You know, 1.38, this is a year ago, so 1.38 days average rental duration, and 86% of our riders were visitors. And that really allowed us to scale in many cities around Europe and really take that model and be really good at addressing this market. Also, in terms of acquisition channels, when visitors go to a city and they want to rent a bike, then they Google rent a bike Barcelona. So search, AdWords is a huge part of our acquisition. And then also, you know, even in the branding and the image of the company, very much in this kind of tourist industry, partnering with other tourist organizations. So it was always a plan to kind of go after a local market because that is where the bulk of transport is happening, people in their everyday usage. And then, yeah, about a year ago, we kind of really started to think, okay, this is the time because of, you know, competition coming in, because of our relationships with municipalities and because of investor pressure. We're like, okay, we need to start like going after this local segment. But there's all sorts of, you know, thousands of arguments that we had to make of how we actually do that. How do we kind of redesign how the company works to not cannibalize our visitor market, but also be able to add on, you know, revenue per bike with locals. And that gets complex because you have completely different use cases. You have some people who are picking up from the train station, making a short one-way trip. You have some people who want to keep the bike for a whole day. Some people who are, exchange students who are keeping the bike for, 3 months or something. You have people who, in Copenhagen, their bike breaks and they just need it until it gets fixed. Like all different kinds of use cases, but one app to try and serve these people. Same with demand and pricing. Between weekdays and weekends, we have with the visitors we have like a huge summer peak. You have like different locations that are where the bikes need to be distributed in the world, which are relevant for different types of people. So also in the operations, like working out how to connect with public transport solutions, whether bikes in the city or out of the city, what kind of cities do we go to, and how do we manage the maintenance, what kind of reliability and service quality do we need for different segments. And then, as I said, in the acquisition with locals, then it's much more about branding and awareness, and also partnering with local companies to give bikes to their employees and this kind of thing. So in all of this mess, there's just like a lot of arguments about how do we make the product that really matured in this visitor market, how do we make it work for a completely new mess of problems. We started building stuff and building on top of this visitor product that we already had. So before our 2 hours was the minimum rental period. That's obviously not good because some people want to take shorter trips, so we made 30-minute rentals. Initially with the tourist market, then people could rent and then take the bike wherever they want, but then at the end of their period, their end of their 1.38 days, then they would return to the same location. That's obviously not great for people who want to kind of get around on shorter trips, so we made it possible to drop at other locations. But we made it a paid option because we thought that the relocation costs imposed on us by moving bikes around the city all the time wouldn't be sustainable for us. We built a membership system, a subscription, so people could pay monthly and then get a cheaper rental price. That wasn't so great, so we made it so that people could pay a monthly subscription and then they just get free access to the bikes. We made private memberships so we could have special offers on memberships for employees or for universities or whatever. API integration and deep linking so we could integrate all of our locations and availability into transport aggregators. Worked out that the paid flex thing didn't really work, so we made it free. And then we also added this switch bike functionality to add a little bit of reliability that if you get to your bike and it gets a flat tire, you can easily switch to another one. So we were building all of this just on top of this visitor product that we had. So it did become a bit of a mess, but we kind of needed to go through this process of just mashing all these things and seeing what stuck. Here's an example where, of this kind of like paid, alternative drop-off location where we just added this step in the booking funnel, and people had no idea where they wanted to end with the bike, and they didn't really know why they had to understand this process at that point anyway, so it wasn't ideal. And this is like first version of our memberships where we have like a subscription price which can either be yearly or monthly, and then that gives you some kind of discount on the rental price, so that translates to a 30-minute price and a 12-hour price, and you can also have a free trial on top of that. And then there's also this disclaimer down here that you have to pay an extra fee if you drop at another location. So obviously it's like mashing these things because we were dealing with that big slide there with this one with competing things and competing arguments that we're all having about how it should work. But then we started getting some learnings about what was working and what wasn't. And so around February, March this year, then we kind of started to peel back the layers of all this stuff that we'd added on top and work out what was working for these customers, talking to a lot of people, looking at a lot of data about how people are actually using the bike, where are they going, how long are they using it for. And we got to this kind of rental duration niche where people were taking it for 12 hours and they could keep the bike, which is kind of something that only we're doing in the bike sharing world. This unlimited subscription thing where you just pay one monthly fee and get free access to all of the bikes all over the world, then it worked. So of course we rolled it out in other cities. In Berlin we did it in April, and you can see like an immediate uptick on what was happening there. This also is, you got to think that in the spring then everything's kind of an uptick because people ride bikes more and when it's sunny. So yeah, there's a disclaimer on these graphs. People started using the bikes more. This is also for members, which means they're getting more value out of the system that we've built. And then, yeah, active members per month, also with a big spring uptick. And then my favorite is the revenue cohort graph. So really kind of all came, yeah, we had to go through this process of having these arguments, building these things, and then peeling back the layers to work out what was happening underneath and how, with all of these different use cases, people would actually use the product. And for me, it really came back to this thing of, you know, these trump cards that we had to think about instead of all of those other things, which was convenience and price. Is when you want a bike, then you want to know that you can get it conveniently, that it's like right down there. There are some just down there. But you can get it right down there and you know how to get it. You turn on your Bluetooth and you unlock the bike. And then it's got to be at a price point that's reasonable for you and you know how the pricing works. And that has kind of fueled this full redesign that we've done. But we couldn't really get to that point without having that knowledge of all the kind of weird products that we built in between. So it allows us, now that we're rebuilding everything, so this kind of version with the rehashed navigation is being released this week, and then in a month we'll release this pay-as-you-go, which kind of builds everything much more smoothly into the flow. And we're much more confident about this now that we've built all of these things and worked out what was working and what wasn't. Whereas if we tried to, you know, redo everything from the start a year ago, then we would have had no idea and we wouldn't have been confident, and we would have just kept having these thousands of arguments about, you know, what's the best way for people to use the bike. Yeah, so the end story is, yeah, basically that from last May to this May, I think we'll hit 300% year on year, and then we've doubled the amount of local riders in that time as well. The maths doesn't work out there, but yeah, that's because it's different data. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.